disturbing Americans for decades. But first, we turn to Ed Henry in Washington for the very latest on former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn pleading guilty today to lying to the FBI and the looming tax vote in the Senate. Ed?
Kimberly, great to see you. This caught top White House officials very much by surprise. Mike Flynn guilty plea immediately sparked mainstream media speculation that it was very bad for President Trump, but that is getting a bit ahead of the facts and what we know tonight. Let's stick with what we do know. Retired General Flynn pled guilty to lying to the FBI. He could have faced many more criminal charges, but is only pleading to this so far because he's now agreeing to cooperate with the special counsel Robert Mueller, indicating Flynn may testify against former colleagues in the White House, the campaign even, and the Trump family, possibly even the president himself. New court records show that 4 days after the inaugural, Flynn met with FBI agents and misled them about his contact with the Russian ambassador in December during the presidential transition. Flynn said in a statement it's been extraordinarily painful to endure months of what he calls false allegations of treason. People close to him say he is broken financially and is worried about legal jeopardy for his son as well. That's why people close to the president are telling us tonight they believe Flynn is desperate to say anything and may not have anything on the president or others. The president's personal attorney, Ty Cobb, saying in a statement, quote, "Nothing about the guilty plea or the charge implicates anyone other than Mr. Flynn," even as Democrats claim this is going to be a game changer.
There is broader exposure of other people within the transition team and possibly within the administration. And so I don't think we've seen the end of this.
I've seen no evidence at all indicating that there's any connection between General Flynn and the president, anything involving Russian collusion.
And the Flynn plea deal ended up overshadowing what should be a triumphant day for the president. Sweet victory on what he's been calling a big, beautiful tax cut. He's delivering on it. Breaking late today, a key swing vote in Republican Bob Corker, who has basically been feuding with the president, announced he's a no on the tax cut because he's concerned about debt piling up. But in the end, his opposition is not going to matter much because other wavering Republicans like John McCain and Susan Collins came on board, giving Mitch McConnell a much-needed victory after that colossal failure on repealing and replacing Obamacare. In fact, right now, live on the Senate floor, we've seen Mitch McConnell emerge. He's walking around right now. They're still counting the votes, but McConnell has indicated that they have at least 50. Then Vice President Mike Pence would be the tie-breaking vote to push forward on tax cuts. Then it heads to a conference committee to work out differences with the House version of this bill. But the bottom line tonight, Kimberly, is whether the vote happens tonight or there's a possibility it will slide into tomorrow, a rare Saturday session for the Senate. Tax cuts in the United States Senate are moving forward, something the president promised and is now delivering on. Kimberly?
All right, Ed, thank you so much. Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Also tonight, the Department of Justice has filed an arrest warrant for Jose Garcia Zarate, the illegal immigrant who was being tried for the 2015 shooting death of Kate Steinle. Zarate, who had been previously deported 5 times, was accused of shooting Steinle with a stolen weapon, then subsequently dumping the gun in the bay and fleeing the scene of the crime. According to U.S. immigration officials, the federal government plans to immediately deport Zarate as soon as he is released from custody. This comes after a jury found Jose Garcia Zarate not guilty of murder, involuntary manslaughter, and assault with a deadly weapon. Zarate was only convicted of being a felon in possession of a firearm, a charge that could result in time served. Following the verdict, President Trump issued a series of tweets, quote, "A disgraceful verdict in the Kate Steinle case. No wonder the people of our country are so angry with illegal immigration. The Kate Steinle killer came back and back over the weakly protected Obama border, always committing crimes and being violent, and yet this info was not used in court. His exoneration is a complete travesty of justice. Build the wall." The jury was not told the killer of Kate was a 7-time felon. The Schumer-Pelosi Democrats are so weak on crime that they will pay a big price in the 2018 and 2020 elections. Just moments ago, on Tucker Carlson tonight, Attorney General Jeff Sessions also weighed in. Watch this.
And it's time for this country to get its head on straight. These cities should not be protecting criminal aliens, people who come into the country unlawfully, then they commit another crime, and then they hide that individual and don't let them, as they did with Zapata, be turned over to the ICE officers so they can be properly deported.
So the killer, and he is the killer, is now being deported?
That will be his ultimate fate. We are confident, and we are going to do everything possible to ensure that happens, although there are some potential other charges that could be brought against him. And before being deported and released, we think he should face every charge that is proper to be brought against him. And you can be sure our Department of Justice is working right now to bring any charges that are appropriate.
All right, fantastic. All right, joining us now is Fox News contributor Charlie Hurt, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, and Fox News contributor David Webb. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, gentlemen.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Greg, I'm going to begin with you. Earlier today, you wrote an op-ed for FoxNews.com titled "The Steinle Verdict is Only the Latest Miscarriage of Justice in San Francisco." What do you mean by that?
If you look at the history of what juries have done in San Francisco, it goes all the way back to when I was a law student, and 2 blocks away, as I was sitting in class, the mayor of San Francisco and a board of supervisor were gunned down by a guy by the name of Dan White. His lawyers concocted the most preposterous defense I've ever heard of, the so-called Twinkie defense.
Right.
A diet of junk food led him to be aggressive and violent. The jury swallowed it hook, line, and sinker, and they acquitted him of manslaughter. Only did 5 years and was setting the law and the facts.
Unbelievable. Well, you know, that case brings back, just frightening memories. And then working as a prosecutor in San Francisco, you could see the juries do some unbelievable things. I didn't even expect, David, that they would do what they did here with this Kate Steinle verdict. It was really shocking.
Well, sadly, I think you could have predicted this based on what Greg said. There's a history of this. And it's also a problem in liberal policies, in something that has turned our correction system from punitive into one that is based on excuses. It was your bad upbringing. It was the Twinkie defense. It was something else that caused this. The fact is they excused the behavior. And look, my heart breaks for this family. A father and a daughter walking along, taking a selfie, to wind up dead because someone who should not have been in this country, no matter what. Something else that caused this. The fact is they excused the behavior. And look, my heart breaks for this family. A father and a daughter walking along, taking a selfie, to wind up dead because someone who should not have been in this country, no matter what, was on the street in a city that protected him. These aren't sanctuary cities. These are refuge cities. They are refuge cities, and we're in a budget time right now. And the one thing the Trump administration should do is tie conditions to the budgets, to these cities, to the federal monies. And if they don't comply by next Friday, the 8th, when they have to get this through, they should make sure that they keep the money from them if they don't comply with federal law.
All right, Charles, so obviously the president very upset, and you see some strong words with the decisive, specific action delineated by our Attorney General Jeff Sessions. This is such, I think, a miscarriage of justice, and I think Sean Hannity was correct when he said last night these sanctuary cities, they have blood on their hands.
Oh, absolutely. It's a total travesty of justice. And then to add insult to injury, we saw that lawyer for this thug, this bum, come out afterwards and instantly try to politicize all of it. And he talked about how Donald Trump needed to respect the jury decision because he's under investigation or some nonsense like that. It was absolutely insulting. But if he wants to politicize it, okay, let's have a political fight about this. And that's what we had in the last election. And Donald Trump won. And the reason that he won is because this is not a 50-50, 55-45 issue. This is like an 80-20 issue. Americans are so sick and tired of this kind of crap out of Washington, out of the federal government failing to do its most basic, essential job, that this is a great issue for Republicans if they want to. And if Democrats want to defend sanctuary cities, defend people like this, defend lawless people from just pouring over the border, committing acts like this, and then getting protected, then fine. Let's have that fight. And you know what? Republicans will win in the next election, and then Donald Trump will win re-election. I'm fine with that. Let's have that. Let's continue to have this political debate if they want to.
Kimberly, there's a point to be made here, and I want Americans to pay very close attention to this. Liberals and liberal progressives are willing to sacrifice American lives for their political goals. Pay close attention to what they do. They sacrifice each other, they sacrifice American lives, and their ideology is dangerous to everyone out there.
What's inexplicable is the Department of Justice, the feds, never prosecute under the laws. 21 years ago, Congress passed a law that said it's illegal not to cooperate with ICE, and yet you have 300 sanctuary cities and counties, San Francisco included, who abuse that law. They ignore that law. And there's another law that says if you harbor or shield somebody who's here illegally, that's a crime, 5 years behind bars. And if somebody dies, like Kate Steinle, as a result of what the city and county did in San Francisco, it's life behind bars. The sheriff who let that man walk out of the jail and kill Kate Steinle should have been prosecuted and should be doing life behind bars. But the feds won't touch it. Jeff Sessions needs to get off his duff. Okay, well, let's see. Definitely a call to arms for Jeff Sessions to do something about this, and also obviously would be in keeping with what the president wants to do. Greg, I'm going to double back with you because California Governor Jerry Brown recently signed a bill designating Moonbeam, remember? California a sanctuary state. Right. Talk to us about that. Well, oddly enough, as restrictive and abusive and illegal as that is, because under the Supremacy Clause, the federal government has the final say and province over matters of immigration, Jerry Brown is thumbing his nose at the law. But San Francisco's is even more restrictive than the state sanctuary policy, and both ought to be prosecuted by the feds. You know, there's a serious and significant, loss of life, and you hear the stories in the news, and you meet the illegal immigrants who come into this country, revolving door, exhibiting recidivism, repeated crimes, career criminals, and yet it seems like nothing's done about it, David. No, nothing's done about it. And I want to add another context to this liberal policy of open borders, not doing anything about immigration. They're in effect creating an underclass in America. When you look at the numbers put out there of illegal aliens, and they are illegal aliens under 18 U.S. code, not undocumented immigrants, and you look at the education levels, when they come in with low education levels or no education levels, don't even meet high school graduation at a minimum in America, that means that we are creating a segment of this society that is incapable of participating in this society effectively. We're importing poverty, no matter where they come from, whether it's El Salvador, Estonia, Eastern Europe, Asia, or wherever. We are importing poverty, and that is an economically inviable way to go through and have a society be successful. These liberal policies will bring this country down, and when we become the country that no one wants to come to because of these policies, where do their liberal ideologies go? Yeah, well, Charles, is it going to take that long? I mean, you talk about the elections coming up and that the liberals and the Democrats are going to pay for these policies that ultimately can result in loss of life, like we saw with Kate Steinle gunned down. But there is a reckoning coming in 2018 and in 2020. I think there is. But also, let's remember how all of this insanity began in the first place. It began because Democrats couldn't win any fights based on the ideas that they were trying to propose. All of their issues, they couldn't win any of them. And so the only way to do it was to not change their ideas, but to change the electorate. And that's why they went to this open borders policy and this idea of bringing in all of the, as David says, all of these impoverished people that don't necessarily have any skills or anything, but just throw the borders open and then basically treat them as indentured voters so that they could win a high office again. And that's what they've done. And I'm sad to say it's worked brilliantly. They've succeeded beyond, I'm sure, their wildest imaginations. And they made up the differences for Barack Obama both times, and probably made the difference in both of Bill Clinton's elections. And it's really sinister, but it's true. And not until Americans take back their country and fix all of these problems will this mess subside. And yet the people of San Francisco, Kimberly, seem to go along with all of this. We saw that last night with the jury. I mean, this was a clear case of felony murder. California law says, and you know this, California lawyer, if you fire a weapon into an area where people are and somebody dies, that's felony murder. At the very least, it was manslaughter, which is the reckless handling of gun. Even if you buy his argument that it was accidental, that's manslaughter.
It's outrageous because it was obviously a total conscious disregard for a human life, behaving in this way, acting with essentially implied malice, conscious disregard of a known risk likely to result in great bodily injury or death. Yeah, but I saw this with San Francisco juries, sadly, and I prosecuted a case in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and it's unbelievable because you can sit there and charge the jury and read the jury instructions, and they have a whole different political bent in terms of how they want to see things come out, and they're thinking more about outcome than following the law.
If you want to commit a heinous crime, as I said in my column, San Francisco is the place for you.
Right.
You'll get away with it.
My question to you is this: what if it had been? What would that jury have done if the roles had been flipped and it was a legal American who had shot and killed an illegal, and then this kind of verdict came out?
There would be fires on the Embarcadero. There would
Fisherman's Wharf.
Would be, Fisherman's Wharf would be in flames right now. But this is the hypocrisy of liberal ideology. It ignores facts. It ignores the rule of law. It ignores the realities of life. And again, they're willing to sacrifice anything to achieve their goal. That is contrary to what we do in America.
Yeah, and Greg, real quick, and that's why so many people have asked, can President Trump actually force sanctuary cities to comply with federal law?
He can. He can do it with, sort of carrot and stick. He can...
Heavy with the stick.
He can take... well, the stick would be prosecute these people like the sheriff. But the carrot is really just take the money away from them. There's only one way you can get through to politicians: take their federal government funds away from them. And he has the authority under federal law. Department of Justice has issued an opinion on this and says you can withhold money. They need to start doing it aggressively.
And they have 1 week till next week. We have this shutdown, showdown battle that's underway. Well, Congress has a responsibility here. They can tie this. They can work with the administration. By next Friday, these could be put in place. The restrictions can be there. Take their money. It's the only place other than their votes that they care about.
Yeah, you gotta lift the funds, lift the wallet, and then they'll pay attention and hopefully comply. We'll see. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Good to see you.
And coming up, last night, Sean blamed sanctuary cities for the death of Kate Steinle. Was he right? Also, we'll be joined by two mothers whose children have been killed by illegal immigrants, and we're going to get their reaction to last night's painful verdict as a special edition of Hannity continues.
This program is brought to you.
This is a Fox News alert. We're closely monitoring the Senate floor as a tax reform vote is looming. Now, Vice President Mike Pence is headed to Capitol Hill to oversee the vote, and we're going to bring you more information as we have it. On last night's program, sounded off on sanctuary cities. Watch this.
Kate Steinle, killed back in July of 2015, walking arm in arm with her father on a pier in San Francisco, shot and killed by an illegal immigrant, Jose Garcia Zarate. This man had 7 prior felony convictions, 4 involving narcotics. This was his facing of a 6th deportation. At the time he shot and killed this innocent woman. Sanctuary cities tonight, those that support them, they are to blame for the death of Kate Steinle.
Joining us now are two mothers whose sons have been killed at the hands of illegals. Here with us is Marianne Mendoza. Her son, Police Sergeant Brandon Mendoza, was killed during a head-on collision with an illegal immigrant who was recklessly driving on the wrong side of the road back in 2014. And also with us is Agnes Gibney. Her son, Ron Da Silva, was shot and killed by an illegal gang member while he was standing in a driveway back in 2002. Women, as a mother, I feel for you for the loss of life, a senseless loss of life. And I know this is very difficult. We do appreciate you being here with us tonight. And Marianne, I want to start with you, with your reaction to this stunning verdict. How do you think Kate's parents are coping with this right now?
I can't imagine the heartbreak and the failure that they're feeling that this justice system in the United States has dealt them. And, These crimes started our border. Look at Brian Terry, the Border Patrol agent who was killed, and countless other Border Patrol agents who were killed. It spreads throughout our country, and it's happening to hundreds of thousands of Americans. This isn't just, as awful as it is, this isn't just about Kate Steinle. There are your neighbors and your family and your friends are being affected by illegal alien crime in this country. And we've started, as much as the liberals don't like to hear this, we've started Advocates for Victims of Illegal Alien Crime, which is avac.us, to bring awareness to the American people. And I'm challenging Mitch McConnell to bring Kate's Law and No Sanctuary for Criminals Act to the Senate floor and get those two things passed prior to any discussions about DACA, because both of those bills deal with illegal alien felons, over 500,000 of them in our country, awaiting deportation. This insanity has got to stop.
It's really true, and I can agree with you so much. You know, being a former prosecutor and working in San Francisco and the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, in California having such a large population of illegal immigrants that come in and reoffend all the time. Agnes, do you agree with Sean? Do you think that sanctuary cities killed Kate Steinle?
Absolutely. And oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Agnes.
Yes, I do. It's a direct result of our inept government, the corrupt government, the liberals in the state of California that allowed this to happen. They sent a very clear message yesterday, the governor of California, Jerry Brown, the judicial system, the mayors, and the sheriff's department, that they're going to be protecting the criminals and not us American citizens. It's a disgrace.
You know, the problem here that we see, Marianne, is when you see, like, you know, repeated deportations, like in the case of Zarate, who murdered Kate Steinle, coming in and out, back and forth, a revolving door, and a system that is broken that allows this person to come back in and reoffend and kill.
That's not the only person, and this is what the American people need to understand. There's offenders who are coming over our border 20 and 25 times, 18 times, coming back over, raping innocent children. There's a rape epidemic going on in South Carolina. There are so many crimes that are committed by people who are deported and walk right back over our border. And Americans are kidding themselves that they don't think that we need a wall and we need a secure border in our country. It's the only way that it's going to stop this repeat offense.
Agnes, why do you think, why should law-abiding Americans tolerate any kind of crime from illegal immigrants? And that's basically what the President of the United States is saying. Why should we tolerate it? Why should the taxpayers, why should the mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers who have suffered unspeakable loss tolerate this type of behavior?
We shouldn't. American citizens should not be tolerating this, and they ought to be calling the congressmen and demanding this nonsense to stop. How many lives is one too many? How many lives more are we going to lose? What message did San Francisco send to the rest of the country that you can come to California, you can kill, and you walk free? This is insanity. This needs to stop. I was heartbroken and furious with the system. I'm a legal immigrant myself. We follow the law. And for the first time, I was disappointed with my country.
Oh, my goodness. You can only imagine, right? I mean, and you are both so brave, such wonderful, beautiful women to come here and to share this with the people out there, the real life, the suffering and disappointment that you have, you know, in your hearts. I can only imagine when you go to bed at night how much you must, you know, miss your boys. Marianne and Agnes, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And joining us now with more reaction to the shocking verdict in the murder trial of Kate Steinle is America First Action spokesman and senior advisor, former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark. Always a pleasure to have you with us. And you must be just so disappointed with what happened here in San Francisco. I know I'm disappointed and disgusted, having been a prosecutor and been First Lady of that city, to see this kind of outrageous miscarriage of justice. Will anything happen to change with this verdict that happened in the debate in this country on sanctuary cities?
Not likely, not as long as Congress continues to kick the can down the road on illegal immigration and immigration reform in this country. Look, both sides have been using this thing as a political football, looking for political leverage. There's basically no will on the United States Congress to fix our broken immigration system. The only elected official in Washington, D.C., who understands that this is a crisis and has a sense of urgency about it is President Donald Trump, who campaigned on it. Look, this whole thing is ass backwards. You know, I'd sit there, I listen to the mothers. Kate Steinle's family still can find no peace. And now I hear that ICE says they're going to deport this guy. It's too late. Here's what my problem is with them deporting the guy now. I like Jeff Sessions' idea, charge him federally, maybe rack up 10, 15, 20 years where he can sit in a prison, because if they deport him right now, he will be right back in the country because our border is not sealed. For heaven's sakes, seal the damn border.
Yeah, seal the border, build the wall, follow the law. These are the problems that we're having, and California is really just a pitiful example of how bad this problem has gotten. And we were speaking earlier in the program about elections coming up. We heard from Jeff Sessions earlier on Tucker's program. Sean saying sanctuary cities to blame for the death of Kate Steinle. But now we have a president with the will and wherewithal, and I'm sure you've had conversations with him, Sheriff, about this issue.
Precisely, and push is going to have to come to shove for the United States Department of Justice. Look, there are federal laws that are being violated by sanctuary cities, catch and release policies. And the Justice Department is going to have to develop the teeth, put some teeth into their rhetoric, and charge these officials, charge these mayors, charge these law enforcement officials that are going to defy federal law. Sanctuary cities are illegal, we know it, and all we see is the back and forth, the threatening of pulling funding, and then you get some activist judge who gets in the way, and he delays that and says that they cannot do it because Congress has already approved the funding. But they didn't do that when President Obama threatened to pull funding from schools from not having allowing men to use women's bathrooms. So at some point, the Justice Department, Jeff Sessions, is going to have to charge one of these individuals. Forget about the funding stuff, all right? Charge one of them criminally. One of these statutes can end up in a person upon conviction serving 10 years in a federal prison. Some public official is going to have to be charged and prosecuted to get the attention of everybody else. But until then, the Congress, as I said, they don't have the will. Kimberly, they do not have the will to fix this broken immigration system because both sides are using it for political leverage.
No, you're absolutely right. And Greg Jarrett was on earlier. He, concurs, feels the same way as an attorney that, the law is there. Somebody's going to need to be prosecuted and be held accountable to actually stop the flow of blood coming from these criminal recidivists who keep coming in, are deported, come back in again, commit more crimes, and no one seems to matter. It's almost like you got to give these people an apology. Oh, I'm sorry, we have to prosecute you, or we can't let you come back in and forth to commit more crimes against innocent, law-abiding people. I mean, when you look at this picture of what happened here and you see this guy, honestly, I cannot believe that San Francisco did this. As bad as some of the things they've done in the past, how did this guy, a felon in possession of a gun, not be convicted of anything? I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, the thing that's most disgusting to me is that this illegal alien had more rights than Kate Steinle and Kate Steinle's family.
He's going to get credit time served or something.
That's the thing that chaps my rear end. It really does. That an illegal alien has more rights than a United States citizen. But again, look, Congress, all they do is pay lip service. Now there's this funding for the wall that's tied up in, they hide it in other bills.
Right.
And then Chuck Schumer comes along and threatens to shut down the government if that's included in a bill. And then the GOP backs off. Look, it is high time in this country. The American people have spoken. They spoke last November and they continue to speak. They want this illegal immigration crisis fixed. They want it solved. We are a sovereign nation, and if you're going to be a sovereign nation, you have to have borders, and you have to protect those borders. That's what we expect our federal officials to do.
Isn't that the bare minimum we can do in terms of a basic decency, a basic expectation of an innocent girl and her father walking down the street to not be slaughtered? Well,
you've seen some of the victims there. Some law enforcement officers have been killed by people illegally in the country. Other citizens, have been victimized as well. And when the United States federal government cannot protect its citizens from an illegal invasion, and that's what they is. They're allowing people to come into the country illegally and set up residency. And then when they kick them out, they come back over, they kick them out, they continue to come back over. This is a cat and mouse game by these illegal aliens. They know it. They know that there's little that will happen to them, especially if they hide out in a sanctuary city where they're provided a safe haven.
Unbelievable. It's really outrageous, and it seems to be getting worse, but I have faith that the president is going to do something about it, and we're waiting on Jeff Sessions to do it as well. Sheriff Clark, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And we have much more on the special edition of Hannity. Up next, we'll tell you where things stand with the accused sexual harassers, Senator Al Franken and Congressman John Conyers, and whether they will resign or not. Stay with us. Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. We are looking live at the Senate floor right now as we await the final vote on the tax reform bill. We've gotten word that Vice President Mike Pence will head to the Capitol to preside over the vote, and we're going to bring you updates as they happen. But first, the Democratic Party routinely claims that it's the party of women and minorities. But given the numerous sexual harassment allegations against both Senator Al Franken and Congressman John Conyers, is that true? Senator Franken has apologized for his inappropriate behavior, but Congressman Conyers remains adamant that he is innocent. Earlier today, John Conyers' attorney addressed whether the congressman has plans to resign. Take a listen.
He will continue to defend himself until the cows come home. We will discuss in the next day or so what Mr. Conyers plans to do. As you know, his health is not the best, and it will be Congressman John Conyers who will be the one to decide what it is he is going to do in terms of whether he's going to continue to represent the people. It's not going to be Washington.
And joining us now with reaction are Salem Radio nationally syndicated host Larry Elder, Fox News contributor and former Clinton pollster Doug Schoen, and Fox News contributor Deneen Borelli. What a panel we have indeed. Yep. All right. So, Doug, there are growing calls for Conyers to resign. Do you think he should step down? You heard his attorney saying, he's obviously he's elderly. Sure. He's having health problems. He was hospitalized for some stress-related issues. People kept wondering, is it going to happen today? And then you recall, harken back to Nancy Pelosi saying that he's iconic. He was somebody who was a champion for women and minorities. Where do we stand now?
Well, I think every Democrat, certainly this Democrat, hopes that he takes the path of least resistance for himself and the party and does resign. Look, this is a no-win situation because his credibility has impaired. He's had to give up his chairmanship. And it's best for the party that he goes. And I would also say Al Franken, he should go too. The Democrats have a great opportunity in 2018. The polls show a double-digit lead in the generic vote. The only way to realize the full benefit of that is to get rid of the distractions. And given what has happened or what's been alleged, I think the party would be best to move on without Representative Conyers and Senator Franken.
Okay, so there you have the crux of the problem, which is the individual versus what is in the best interest, of the party. And Deneen, how do you see this? Because, we saw a woman coming out that is herself iconic in the Democratic Party. Nancy Pelosi making strong statement in support of John Conyers. Also, Congressional Black Caucus, people coming out to support him.
Versus the actions. Leanne Tweeden had an actual photo of being groped while she was asleep. John Conyers has this settlement that's out there. There's also another woman that has come forward. We'll find out more about that. Bill Clinton had his own evidence that came out about his misdoings. It's all a big fraud. It's all a big front. It's all about votes when it comes to identity politics. They play the race card, they play the child card, they play the woman card, anything to get votes and anything for power.
Well, that's the criticism, Larry. They're saying, look, this is a party of hypocrisy, that they claim to hold this banner high above their heads, looking down with disdain at others who are not so, perfect in the way they conduct themselves. Yet look at it now. Look at what's happening.
Well, that's right. And in the case of John Conyers, I'm probably not a good person to ask whether or not he should resign, because for 47 years, in my opinion, he's been completely useless. This is a man whose area is largely Detroit. Poverty has gone up. You find the proliferation of children being born without fathers in the home. 25% of kids were born out, black kids were born outside of wedlock 50 years ago when Conyers first came to Congress, and now about 73% of black kids are born outside of wedlock. They don't don't want vouchers. They want to jack up the minimum wage. That hurts minorities and women who are working part-time, often on minimum wage. They don't even want to think about privatizing Social Security, which a study has shown would disproportionately benefit black workers because they die earlier. So all these policies have hurt black people. Under Obama, for 8 years, the black poverty rate got worse. The wealth gap between the average white household and black household widened. The labor force participation rate for black men got worse. Their policies of tax, spend, and regulation have not worked, and they've disproportionately hurt the very people that they claim they care about, women and minorities.
Well, what do you say to this, Tanine? Because, yeah, this is the problem. They really have campaigned, profited in terms of, fundraising, getting money in from a lot of women's groups and minority groups that feel like this is the party that represents us, that we feel protected by, that here's our voice. And yet now look at this. It's been an abysmal failure. And Doug is saying if the party is to continue and try to, prosper and go forward and actually try to take advantage of some opportunities coming up, they may have to say, you've got to go.
Well, Larry Elder makes a great point. I mean, look at the urban communities that are run by Democrat politicians that have been in shambles for many, many years, failing public schools, high crime rates. Look at Chicago, for example.
Chicago.
I mean, listen, the voters need to look at how their communities have not progressed, how their communities have not turned around for many, many years. John Conyers is a perfect example. He's been in office way too long, and he's done nothing really for his community to really turn it around.
How do you see it?
I see it differently. This next election is going to be a referendum on the Trump administration and its failure to get a lot done. Even if we do get, as I expect, a tax bill, it's an unpopular tax bill. There's control of the House and the Senate both at stake. These issues are a distraction and a serious one to the party, as I was saying before, and as you accurately summarized. And I want the Democrats to win as a centrist party that is inclusive. To do that, they need people like Conyers and they need people like Al Franken to go, and we need to develop a set of policies that represent all the people, not just a liberal ideological bloc.
All right. Well, so what's the idea going forward then, Tanine? What do the Republicans do to point this out, to maybe try to capitalize, because there's some vulnerabilities coming forward?
Well, they need to get out there and talk about pro-growth initiatives, talk about school choice, talk about lower taxes, less regulations. This will help turn the economy around, turn the country around, create jobs. That is what they need to do, is to get the message out. It's not black, white, male, female, whatever. This is an American issue for folks to understand what these policies will do.
Absolutely, and expecting and demanding, results. Larry?
And we were talking earlier in your segment about illegal immigration.
Yes.
The Democrats don't want to do anything about that.
Nothing.
One of the leading economists, George Borjas of Harvard, probably done more work on the impact of legal and illegal immigration than maybe anybody else, says there's no question that the proliferation of unskilled illegal aliens poses competition for work for inner city people and puts downward pressure on their wages. And Democrats don't want to do anything at all about this, even though it is
This
hurting the very
Democrat would
people that
love
they
to
claim
do
to
a
care
deal
about.
on immigration and tightening the border, Larry.
Oh, well, we found one.
Well, yes.
There's the needle in the haystack.
Exactly.
Doug
I'll plead guilty to that.
Oh, my goodness. All right.
Doug has always been reasonable. Doug has always been reasonable. I wish more people in your party felt the way you do, honestly.
He's
Thank
like in
you,
law
Larry. I
school.
appreciate it.
The reasonable
Return
man
the favor.
standard.
You got it.
Exactly. Remember that.
You got
Quid
it.
pro quo. All right, you guys. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Janine, Doug, and Larry. Always a pleasure. Next, we're going to have the very latest on what's happening with the Senate's historic tax bill as a special edition of Hannity continues. Welcome back to the special edition of Hannity. We are looking live at the Senate floor, where a series of votes are about to begin that will pave way for a final vote on the GOP tax reform bill, a key part of President Trump's agenda. Joining us now with reaction, Republican strategist Noel Nickpour, Fox News contributor Guy Benson, and Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk. Everybody, thank you so much for being with us tonight. So an exciting night for the Republicans, working hard on this to get this vote passed. If so, what's next? Go with you, Charlie.
Well, it's quite significant, actually. And I do want to say, you know, there's been so much media uproar about what senators are voting and what senators are not voting. Just to take a step back and to realize the significance of what is about to happen here. This is the largest tax cut in nearly 40 years, since really President Reagan argued for it in the early 1980s. And we're going to see almost a doubling in the standard deduction, an incredible amount, trillions of dollars of repatriation of foreign capital to come back to this country. And you're going to see a total restructuring and simplification of the tax code. I think they're going to get it done tonight, absent any surprises from some senators from Arizona. And the vice president will break the tie. So this is a huge, huge win for President Trump.
I think he said he's in. Yes, we're on Pence alert, waiting to see what's going to happen here. So, Guy, what do you make of the tax bill here, and do you think that, you know, it's looking auspicious for this to go through?
Well, I just got off the phone before we came on the air with a senior source among Senate Republicans, and they are feeling very confident tonight. 51 votes, they say, are locked down. The vice president is on his way to the Senate right now to preside over a significant vote. They don't believe he's going to have to cast a tie-breaking vote.
Wow,
every
good.
Democrat is going to vote no, and every Republican will vote yes, except for Bob Corker, who says that he cannot vote for this bill. As to your first question, look, this is going to be, despite so much of the misinformation and rhetoric out there on the left, this is going to be a tax cut for the vast majority of the American people, including the vast majority of middle-class Americans. If you take the standard deduction, which is 70+% of you right now, you are getting a win under this bill. And the other point, too, Kimberly, our corporate tax rate is uncompetitive internationally. It is the highest in the developed world. Our effective rate is near the highest in the developed world. We cannot compete on that level. It is inefficient at the very least. That is coming down in a significant way. There are many attributes for this bill that will help a lot of people grow the economy, grow jobs, and yet we hear from the left it's a tax increase on the middle class. That's a lie.
Okay, so Noel, how do you like it? How do you see it in terms of people you're out there talking to? Because, you know, some people have some mixed emotion about it. I think, you know, Guy and Charlie have laid it out very well in terms of, you know, some of the benefits of it. And it certainly is in keeping with some of the campaign promises of President Trump, the repatriation, et cetera, the corporate tax implications. And as Guy said, just, you know, across the board, the majority of Americans will be able to feel some relief, some benefit from this.
Right. And Kimberly, another thing that is really going to help is it's the 2018, it's the midterm elections. And I've been very worried about this as a national fundraiser for elections that are coming up, that if we didn't get anything passed, we were going to see a lot of trouble in the polls with some upcoming elections in the midterms. So this is going to be really good for energizing the Republican Party and for President Trump. I actually look for President Trump's approval rating to go a little higher because of this. He can check this box off for one of his fulfilled promises. So this is going to be good on so many levels, for the market, for fundraising within the Republican Party, and for the actual people that voted for Trump that wanted good policies like this. They're going to get their promise, and it's going to be good for the American people. We're going to have a great economy.
You know, you would think, Charlie, that some of the Democrats and liberals, if they were being really honest and forthright, that they would be happy about this, because it's not just something that's giving tax benefits to the rich. It's actually the everyday, hardworking men and women across this country, like President Trump promised, that he would not leave behind or be forgotten anymore.
That's exactly right. And you look at some of the lies that the left is putting against this. I think it's really bad politics, to be honest with you, that they're opposing this. I mean, you're going to have people filing their taxes in February and March, and they're going to say, wait a second, my deduction now goes up to $20,000 a year. This is phenomenal. Wait a second, I can write off these deductions. This is great. Wait a second, this business down the street is now hiring all these workers. This is great. All of a sudden, they're going to look at their taxes. They're going to say, wait, last year I was only to write off $12,000. Sure. I can now write off $20,000 on my taxes. It's going to be an explosion of economic growth. And kudos to President Trump. If you remember, he did that deal with Pelosi and Schumer back in September. It opened up the budget process for this to happen. And now Americans can go into the Christmas season knowing that they're going to have thousands of more dollars in their pocket, and that businesses are going to have trillions of total capital cumulatively to be able to create more jobs in this country. Huge win for the Make America Great Again agenda.
I mean, I'm a believer. Listen to Charlie, right, Guy? He's like, he's all in. He's like, deal me in.
Yeah, well, I think there are, you asked about, are there concerns? Look, there will be deficits that will go up because of this bill. I think it's exaggerated how much that will be the case, but conservatives ought to care about the national debt. And there are other things like entitlement reform that ought to be on the table. Mathematically, it's necessary. Also, there are some Americans, a small percentage of Americans, mostly richer people in blue high-tax states, who are going to get a tax increase under this bill. We should not make it up and not tell the truth about that the way Democrats do with Obamacare. They said, oh, everyone's going to win under Obamacare. That turned out to be flagrantly false. It's worth acknowledging there's a tiny fraction of Americans comparatively who will be losers under the bill, but the overwhelming vast majority of the middle class are winners.
Okay, can you give me your best 20 seconds, Noelle?
Well, you know what? I think this is foreshadowing of good things to come. If we got together and we could push together and get tax reform, I think that you're going to see more things being passed, and I think that Trump is on his way to make America great again.
All right, fantastic. Our panel likes it tonight. Thank you so much, Noelle and Guy and Charlie. What a pleasure to have you this Friday evening.